Hi everyone, this is John Elligaw. I'm a reporter with the New York Times, and I'm here in Sydney, Australia. I am at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and we are lucky to be joined today by Cara Pinchbeck, who is the curator of the Indigenous art here at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Cara, how are you doing today?
Well, thanks.
Thank you for joining us. So yeah, let's jump right into it. We're down here in the Indigenous Gallery. And first of all, just for people who don't know anything about Australia or Aboriginal people or whatnot, just give a sense of who are Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people, and just talk a little bit about their art in general.
Yeah. So in Australia, there's two groups of Indigenous people: Aboriginal people who are from mainland Australia and Tasmania, and also people from the Torres Strait Islands, which are off the coast of Queensland, between Australia and New Guinea, really. And right across the country, there's a wide variety of art that's made, because Australia, or Indigenous Australia, is made up of about 250 distinct groups of Indigenous people, and each of those groups has its own unique style of painting, of working with material culture, and their own forms of visual language. And what we try and do here at the Art Gallery of New South Wales in this space, which is our Yiribana Gallery, our space dedicated to the display of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art, is to really show the diversity of practice across the country, from different time periods, different areas of the country, different the different mediums that are used, and the different styles of art making that are particular to certain areas of Australia.
Okay, good. And let's jump right in and talk about some art here, Cara. And I just want to invite our viewers, if you have any questions about the art here or about, Aboriginal people or anything like that as we're going through, please feel free to ask, and I will ask Cara, and maybe we'll have the answer, maybe we won't, but that's okay. So, Cara, I think you want to talk about this piece first. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, I thought we'd start with this work here. It's a work by Martin Jampajimpa, and he's an artist who's from Western Australia, from the Western Desert area of Western Australia. And his work is included in this exhibition at the gallery, which is called Sentient Lands. And Sentient Lands really looks at the ancestors or figures who've travelled across Australia and really given form to the country, created mountain ranges, created water sources, and who remain really kind of embedded in country as a living presence in country today. And their presence is given form in amazing artworks like we're looking at here by Martin Jampajimpa, and this particular work by Martin refers to the Tingari ancestors. And the Tingari were a group of people who travelled right across Australia, from the top of the far western coast of Australia right down through the central desert to the southern coastline of Australia. And as they travelled across this country, they shaped the country. They encountered water sources, rivers, mountain ranges, and as they journeyed through country, they stopped at particular sites in country. So we can see in this work here, these concentric circular elements refer to particular locations in country that they stopped at, and that are important for people who are living in that country today. And they really provided a way for surviving in that country, a means of living in country. And this particular visual language of these interconnected concentric circles is particular to those Tingari ancestors, and given a variety of forms in art from
Why is that
this
particular
area.
to them? Why is the concentric circles connected in particular to them?
That's the visual language they use for depicting particular sites in country. And the Tingari travelled through the desert, and so Pintupi people and other groups from that area of Australia would talk about their journeys and talk about their connection to country in a variety of other forms before painting was done. And one of those forms was to create large sand sculptures on the ground, where people would literally draw the sites into the sand, and ceremonies may have been performed around those sand sculptures. And so the drawing of those sites in sand as these circular elements has been translated into the painting practice from the area.
Yeah. And I noticed in a lot of art, you see like the sort of circles and the dots, little dots. Like what is that?
Different artists use the dots in different ways in the style of painting that emerged in the practice of Pintupi artists like marten, the dotting was almost a veil that was applied to this, almost like a map of country that was being created to, in a sense, cover what was being told, but to also create that visual interest in the work.
And we have already one question from Jack Spira, who asks, he goes, he says the artwork is beautiful. How aesthetically unified is Aboriginal art? I guess how similar is it across the many people, many tribes and nations?
It's really diverse. There's different styles of painting coming from different areas right across Australia, and even artists who are working side by side. Martin Jumpajimpa was from the same community as Bobby West Juparula, whose work is just beside him here, and so you can see how those two artists who are working in the same community and looking at their same cultural inheritance, the Tingari again, are depicting the Tingari in such different ways. So,
and what is the name of this artist here?
So this is Bobby West Juparula, and it's a Tingari painting again. And you can see in the work we were looking at those concentric circular elements before, and Bobby West continues to use that language in his work in these elements here. So these are particular sites in his country that refer to the Tingari, and what a lot of artists like Bobby West are trying to do to create visual or optical effects in their work that relate to the dynamism of that country, that it's a living, breathing landscape, and that it's being animated by the Tingari themselves, who are literally embedded within the country. And this particular work by Bobby West is focused on a large salt lake in his country, a salt lake that's called Wilkonkara, or also known as Lake Nakai, and that's this vast salt lake in his country, and it's in the desert, so you can imagine that brilliant Australian sunlight hitting that salt encrusted lake and creating these amazing mesmerising optical effects, and that's what Bobby West tries to capture in his work as well, a sense of the physical aspects of the landscape.
Okay. Should we move on? And let's make sure we got to keep our voices up so our audience hears here. And we're moving on here. And we had one person asking where we're at. They joined the stream late. We're at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and that's in Sydney, correct?
In Sydney, Australia, that's right.
Okay, great.
Right
so
in the heart of Sydney.
I love this. This piece is just, it kind of tickles you a little bit when you look at it. It's bats hanging upside down, but there's a particular story behind this. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. This is a work by an artist called Lynn Onus, and it's called Fruit Bats. It's from 1991, and it's one of the most loved works in our collection. We get complaints if it's not on display, and everyone loves it, from little kids right through to adults. And really, this work is a comment on Australia and the presence of Aboriginal people in Australia, because you'll see in the work the 100 or so fruit bats in the sculpture are hanging on a Hills Hoist clothesline, and the Hills Hoist clothesline is an Australian invention, and they're found in most suburban backyards. So it's kind of the great Australian dream, to have your own house in a quarter-acre block and to have the Hills Hoist clothesline in the background to dry your washing, really. But Lynn Onus has used that icon of Australian suburbia, and this flock of fruit bats have taken up residence there to really comment on the fact that Aboriginal culture is present right across Australia, even in suburbia where it's not necessarily seen, and he's making a comment on that presence of Aboriginal culture that's often
Is there a
ignored.
connection between the bats and Aboriginal culture in particular?
In different areas of the country, yes. So Lynn Onus spent a lot of time working in Maningrida, which is in Arnhem Land in the Northern Territory in Northern Australia, and the design that you can see on the fruit bats, this cross-hatching that you see on the bats, comes from that particular area of Arnhem Land, and so does the design, the floral-like design that you can see on the clothesline, and all the little circular wooden discs at the bottom of the clothesline. And that's a particular design that relates to a particular location, a particular paperbark forest, where the bats fly through that forest to get the nectar in the paperbark trees. And as they're flying through the forest, their droppings fall into the creek at that site and imbue the creek with power. And it's important to a particular group of people, Ganalbingu people, and so Ganalbingu people use this particular crosshatch design and also the floral design that we see on the discs at the bottom to talk about the presence of the fruit bats at this location in country.
So the floral design, those are actually droppings representing.
Yeah, so they're actually the bat droppings on the ground underneath the clothesline. And this work has a real relevance to Sydney because there's always fruit bats in Sydney, and they're seen as a bit of a pest, really. They'll fly through Sydney, they'll poo on your car, it damages the Duco on your car, and they've had to move to different locations as trees have been lost and their colonies have had to move on, and that's, you know, in many instances the same situation that Aboriginal people have found themselves in, moving away from their country as you know, colonial Australia has expanded across the country.
We have lots of people are loving what they're seeing. Norma Gorto says, cool bats art piece. Hi, Denver, Colorado, USA. We had a couple of people. There was one person tuning in from Pakistan. She said, hi, I'm from Pakistan. It's wonderful. That's Mapara Aslam. So you want to move on and show us some of the other stuff here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll move into another exhibition that's on at the gallery at the moment, which is called Our Lands. And I guess the works we've been looking at talk about the connection particular artists have to their own country. Our Lands takes a stronger standpoint and looks at the work of artists who comment on the lack of rights to country that Aboriginal people have had in Australia due to the way that Australia has been established basically as an English colony.
Okay.
So we might look at, start with this work over here.
So just to be clear, the pieces we're looking at, it's the sentient lands. That's really looking at the past and, you know, kind of the connection to the land. And this is Our Lands, kind of, you know, looking forward in terms of, you know, looking forward at their connection now in the future.
Yeah, the connection now, and I guess the connection to country that we've just been looking at in those works hasn't been respected in Australia. So the works that we're going to look at now are a response to that. They're talking about why people don't have that connection to country and what the implications of that are for Aboriginal people living here now.
Gotcha. And so this Sir No Beard. So what do you want to explain this one to us?
Yeah, so No Beard, this is a great work by Daniel Lloyd, and Daniel did a series of these works that referred to various colonial figures. This is Joseph Banks, who travelled on the Endeavour with Captain James Cook, and for Daniel, he sees these figures who are so often talked about as being colonial heroes. He sees them as being pirates because they came to Australia, they took things from Australia, they claimed Australia for England as a colony of England, but it was already owned by Indigenous people here, so they didn't have a right to do that. So he depicts them as pirates. So in this work we see Joseph Banks as Sir No Beard, and that's a comment on the fact that when Banks and Cook and others arrived in Australia, they didn't have any facial hair. So local Aboriginal people thought that they were women because they lacked that facial hair. But it also plays on a sense of his masculinity as well in this work, which Daniel is quite interested in. And you'll see that Banks is surrounded by objects that he's collected on various voyages that he's been on across the Pacific, and most confronting in the work is the specimen jar that we see in the lower left corner. So we see this specimen jar here, and as Banks and Cook and others came to Australia, and then obviously the first fleet arrived in 1788, there were many Aboriginal people who fought against the establishment of the colony. And one of those people in Sydney was a man called Pemulwuy, who was a really important resistance fighter. But because of that, he was subsequently killed and beheaded, and his head was preserved in a specimen jar and sent back to England. So Daniel is referencing that particular moment in his work that he's decided to do a self-portrait of himself in that specimen jar.
Oh, so that's the self-portrait of the artist, but it's
Yeah.
representing what was done to Pemulwuy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Daniel himself, and we've had long conversations about why he did that and why he didn't depict someone else. And he said, well, if I was going to, put someone who was beheaded in a specimen jar, I didn't want to subject anyone else to that. It had to be me who was included in the work, and really does make a comment about the impact of this particular moment and what Banks and others did on Daniel and his life today.
And it's interesting here with the beard thing. So they're basically poking fun at them, the Cyrano beard thing. That they were, because they didn't have any facial hair. These were people who came in and took their land forcibly, but they're kind of making fun of them.
Yeah, and playing with that notion of these figures who have, throughout Australian history been seen as heroes. But for Daniel and so many other Indigenous artists, they're just not heroes at all, and they shouldn't be seen in that light.
Yeah. Now let's go. There's an interesting piece over here on this wall that gets very political, as I've seen it. I think it probably can resonate in some ways with an American audience too. When you look at talking about the connection between Aboriginal people, the police, and the media, can you talk a little bit about this one right here?
Yeah, definitely. This is a fantastic work by an artist based in Brisbane, Gordon Hookey. And it's a work he did in 1995 called Cognitive Frontier. And it's a comment about that particular moment in Sydney in the mid-1990s when there was real tension between the Aboriginal community in Redfern at the time and the media and the police.
And then Redfern is a Sydney suburb, correct?
Yeah, so Redfern is a suburb of Sydney which has for a long time had a large Aboriginal population, and Redfern has been the place where there's been a lot of important Aboriginal initiatives like Aboriginal Housing Association, medical service, legal service, but those achievements aren't often discussed by mainstream media. And at this particular moment in the mid-90s in Redfern, there was a real divide between the local Aboriginal community, which Gordon Hookey depicts as these native animals down at the bottom of the work, and rather than depicting Aboriginal people, he depicts us as native animals. And he's talking about those stereotypes that so many people have about Aboriginal people, just drinking all the time and not doing anything, and makes a comment on that you probably can't see it, but in the text here he says 40,000 years is a long time, 40,000 years still on my mind. So he's reminding us of that long connection to country that Aboriginal people have had for generations upon generations.
I see some names there: David, John, Joe. Are those anyone in particular, or is that just...
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I have to ask Gordon. Not that I know of. And at this time in Redfern, there was a huge Aboriginal presence, and the TNT towers that you see in the work are these two high-rise buildings in Redfern where the police were basically thought to have set up camp so they could continually have the local community under surveillance, just watching everything that was going on all the time. And it was a really uncomfortable environment. I was working at Redfern at the time, and you couldn't get out of the train station and walk to wherever you were going without encountering police on every corner
and
every
the
block.
TNT towers, what was the
Huge
significance of
presence.
those towers?
They're just these two high-rise towers that are right in the middle of Redfern, and they overlook the block, which is kind of the heart of Redfern.
And the officer police would actually be on top of it, surveilling?
Yeah, so the police were literally camped out in TNT towers, as well as having a strong presence on the street, and the media worked really closely with the police to present all of these negative comments about the community at the time. So in the work you see the media here also represented as these three pigs, as speaking no evil, hearing no evil, and seeing no evil.
And these are the stations.
Yeah, so these are the television stations in Australia, and you can see they're just aligned with this, police officer who we see here, complete with his.
And so this is the officer right here on top, surveilling.
Yeah.
And then this is what he sees through the crosshairs of the gun, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And using the symbol of pig, which in the US a lot, people derogatory term for police officers are pigs. Is that same here?
Same here. Same here. Yeah, absolutely. And you can see a person with their gun fired up at the police office, standing on top of the building, but the end of the gun almost forms into a spear, which of course is an Aboriginal weapon. So, I mean, it's making such a strong comment about the tensions that exist and continue to exist between Indigenous people and the police and the media, which are so complex and play out in so many different ways, as obviously has happened so much in America.
Yeah, so this is still very relevant here in the Australia.
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Hey, well, Cara, I think that's all the time we have for today. But thank you so much for joining us. And again, just tell folks if they want to come see this exhibit. Is this a permanent exhibit? Where should they come, and how long is it here? Can you just give us the information?
Yeah, they should come to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and this particular exhibition, Our Lands, is up until mid-June, and Sentient Lands is up until early October.
Okay,
and
great.
then we'll change it for something else, which is just as fantastic from the collection.
And what's the cost to come visit this exhibit?
It's free, absolutely free, so you have to come along.
Just whatever the plane ride or the car ride is, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, Cara. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.